Shalom Aleichem, and today we're looking at chapter 13 where we're looking at Hebrew verbs. Now here's what we want to look at in this chapter. The first one, we're going to understand that most Hebrew words are formed from a three-letter root. Most Hebrew words are going to be formed from a three-letter root. And secondly, we're going to understand how roots are altered to form different kinds of words. And then we'll look at the car-active verbs and how they are formed. And then number 4, we'll look at how Hebrew word order works, and that is how Hebrew builds his sentences. And then finally, we'll look at translation, how we translate simple sentences based on what we would have covered in this chapter. So let's get started. Alright, I can hear you say, what are verbs? Verbs are action words. You know that already. Verbs are words that show action. For example, in Genesis 1 verse 1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, and the earth was without form and void, and God said, let there be light. Let there be light. So those are verbs. Created, was, said, be. Those are words. They're action. They show action. Created, was, said, be. Verbs are action words. Now, verbs have 4 key features. Verbs have person, they have gender, they have number, they have stem. And this is what we're going to discuss in this chapter. Verbs have person, gender, number, and stem. Let's start with the person, gender, and number. So verbs have PGN. Verbs have PGN. They have person, gender, and number. Now by person is simply talking about who is speaking, who is being spoken to, and who is being spoken about. First person is the person speaking or doing the action, I or we. These are words like I or we. Second person is the person being spoken to. So these are words like you in the second person, you. Third person is simply the person who is being spoken about, he or she or it or they. Third person. So verbs are person, and person has 3. Can be first person, second person, or third person. Also, verbs have gender. Gender can be masculine or it can be feminine. Now, masculine are words that are referring to masculine subjects, and feminine are words that are referring to feminine subjects. So, verbs can take masculine or feminine gender. And then the last one, verbs have number. We have looked at this. Number simply means, is it singular or it's plural? And we've seen how this works in the nouns. So, verbs have also number. It can be singular, it can be plural. Singular verb refers to one person or thing, and plural verb refers to more than one person or thing. So verbs have PGN, person, gender, and number. Now let's look at the 3-letter root. Let's look at how verbs are formed. Now I want to give you a caution here. Because of what we're going to cover, I want to give you a caution here. I want to remind you of the language learning gap. That sometimes when you're learning something new, it takes time and patience. Learning new things may feel confusing at times, but the more you practice and learn, the more you understand. So that confusion is actually how the mind is rewiring itself to adjust to new information that you're learning. So don't be discouraged. Practice, 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 and you're going to understand. Alright, that being said, let's look at how verbs are formed. Now know this. Every Hebrew verb is based on a 3-letter root. And this 3-letter root is called shoresh. It's called shoresh. In Hebrew, it's called shoresh. And this shoresh, this root, is the one that carries the basic meaning or purpose of a given verb. So the basic meaning of a verb is found in the shoresh, in the root, in the 3-letter root. And from the root, Hebrew builds stems, and there are 7 stems in Hebrew, and they are built from the root. And these 7 stems are called binyanim. Binyanim. You can hear that im at the end, meaning it's plural. One is called binyan. Binyan simply means structure. Binyanim means structures. So there are 7 verb stems in Hebrew, and they're called binyanim or structures. And these ones are built from a 3-letter root. The root is the one that carries the basic meaning. And these stems or patterns are formed by adding vowels and affixes. Affixes, remember, can be prefix, infix, or suffix. So these stems are built by adding a prefix or a suffix or an infix. built from the root. Now let me explain what this all means. Now remember I said Hebrew verbs are made up of 3-letter root, and this 3-letter root is called shoresh. So the 3-letter root here, this one is called shoresh. And this root is the one that carries the core, the basic meaning of the verb. And I said that from this root, stems are built by adding suffixes or by adding infix, suffix or prefix to the root. But even if you add suffixes or affixes to the root, the core meaning still remains the same. The core meaning still remains the same. So by adding suffixes or prefixes to that root or changing vowel patterns, you change what the verb communicates. You change the functional meaning, but the core meaning is still the same. For example, here we have this root, mem, lamed, kaf. Mem, lamed, kaf. Now, mem, lamed, kaf, this root carries the meaning of to rule, to reign, to exercise kingship. You have seen this on the nouns. This is where the word melech is built from. Melech. From mem, lamed, kaf. From this root. And so this root means to rule, to reign, to exercise kingship. That's the core meaning. So whenever you see mem, lamed, kaf, whenever you see this root in any form, think of king, think of ruling, think of reigning, think of authority. That's the core meaning is communicating. But now, by adding suffixes and prefixes to that root, as you can see down here, we then form stems. And stems are more like branches that distribute the meaning further. So when we add suffixes here, for example, you get these 3. You have melech, which means king. You have malkut, which means kingdom. And then you have malach, which means he ruled. Malach is a verb, malkut is a noun, melech is a noun. So you can see that by changing or adding suffixes or prefixes to the root, you form the stems, and the stems distribute the meaning further. But the core meaning still remains the same. You're still talking about ruling, you're still talking about reigning or kingship. So the root carries the core meaning, but from the root, stems can be formed by adding suffixes or prefixes. Now look at how the same root letters, mem, lamed, kaf, change by taking suffixes or prefixes, yet the idea of kingship stays the same. So if you know the root, you can guess the meaning even if you have not memorized the word. Just by looking at the root can tell you the core meaning of the word. And that's why knowing the root is very important. Remember, from the root, stems can be formed. So let's look at how Hebrew stems work. Let's look at the 7 binyanim, the 7 stems, the 7 structures. Now, what are the 7 stems? Let me explain. Each Hebrew root, those 3 root letters, can appear in different stems called binyanim. Binyanim simply means stems or structures. One is binyan, more than one, plural becomes binyanim. So the root can appear in the different stems called binyanim, the 7 stems called binyanim. And these stems show the voice. By voice, we mean who is acting versus who is receiving. So voice shows who is acting or who is receiving the action. So the stems can show the voice, and also the stems show us the type of action. What kind of action is being talked about? It can be a simple action, intensive, or causative. It can be simple, intensive, or causative. So think of stems like different lenses through which the same action is expressed. So the binyanim or the binyan defines whether a verb is active, passive, or reflexive. The voice can be active, passive, or reflexive. Now you may be wondering, what does voice mean? What do we mean by voice? We said voice can be active. Active simply means the subject is doing the action. The subject does the action. The voice is active. Passive means the subject is receiving the action. The subject is not doing the action, but is receiving the action. And reflexive or midu, reflexive means the subject does the action to himself. So that's what we mean by active, passive, or reflexive. So the binyan defines whether the verb is active, passive, or reflexive. And also it tells us the kind of action, the type of action, whether the action is simple, intensive, or causative. So on top here we have the kind of action, simple, intensive, causative. On the side, we have the voice, active, passive, reflexive. Let's look at what this all means. So we have the 7 stems. We have the cow, PL, Hifil, Nifal, Pual, Hofal, and Hitpael. These are the 7 stems in Hebrew. And these are important because they give us the voice and the kind of action. The 7 stems. Let's look at them individually. The first one is the cow, which is also called Pa'al. Cow is also called Pa'al. You're going to see it in other books as Pa'al. So the first one is the cow. Cow presents a simple action. In fact, cow means light. Cow presents simple action. And voice in the cow stem is active voice, meaning the subject is doing the action. For example, you have the verb malach, malach. So active voice, we're going to translate malach as hirud, hirud. Active voice, the subject is doing the action. The subject, he, is ruling, so hirud. And the second stem is PL, PL. Now the kind of action in PL is intensive action. The action is intensive and the voice is active. So active voice, intensive action. Why? Because PL intensifies the action. It's more like saying, if you have a verb in PL, the action is going to be intensified. For example, in the cow, it's just simple. For example, if you're talking about breaking or the word broke, in cow it's going to be he broke. But in PL, it's going to be he shattered. He shattered. So you can see PL intensifies the action. But for the verb we're using malach, it's a bit hard to see that intensity. So in PL, it's going to be milech, milech, and that simply means hirud. Hirud. It's a bit hard to intensify that, but PL is going to intensify the action. So milech means hirud. But if it was a verb like broke, it was going to be he shattered, because PL presents intensive action but active voice. Intensive action. The third stem is hifil, hifil stem. And this one presents causative action. The action is causative. The kind of action is causative, but the voice is active. If you can see, we're still in the active voice. The voice is active, but the kind of action is causative. Causative is more like making another person do something. So here we have the verb that talks about kingship or ruling. So in Hifil it's going to be himlik, himlik. And himlik means he caused to rule. He caused to rule. It means he caused to rule. Let me go through. In active it's hirud. In PL it's hirud, but intensified. In Hifil it's going to be he caused to rule, more like making another person to be king. So he caused to rule. Hifil generally means to cause something to happen. You're causing another person or thing to happen, to do something. So Hifil is causative. Hifil is causative. And so we have that. So the form in Hifil is going to be himlik, himlik, himlik. The fourth one in the passive, the fourth one is nifal, nifal. The form in nifal is going to be nimlach, nimlach, nimlach. And nifal presents a simple action. The kind of action is simple action, but the voice is passive. Passive voice means the subject is receiving the action. So in the nifal, which is passive voice, the translation is going to be he was rude, he was rude. And then we have pual, pual stem. In pual, the kind of action is intensive action and the voice is passive. You can see we are in the passive, the voice is passive. Passive again means the subject is receiving the action. The translation is going to be he was rude, he was rude. Now remember, pual is intensive, but for the verb you are using, it's a bit hard to see that. But if we're using a verb like break, the translation in pual, instead of saying he was broken, it was going to be he was shattered. He was shattered. But for the verb we're using, malach, it's going to be he was rude. He was rude. Still in the passive voice. So the form in pual is going to be mulach, mulach. Next we have hofau stem. Hofau stem. Now the hofau stem presents a causative action. The kind of action is causative, but the voice is passive. So causative action, passive voice. And there we have the form homlach, homlach. Remember I'm saying homlach and not hamlach because that one is a kametzatuf. Remember on the vowels, it's in a closed unaccented syllable. That shua is closing the syllable and so it's ho instead of ha. So it's homlach, homlach. And homlach is translated as, since it's causative and it's passive, it's translated as he was caused to rule. He was caused to rule. Hofa generally means to cause to happen. To cause to happen. The last one we have hitpael. Hitpael stem. Hitpael presents intensive action, but the voice is reflexive. The voice is reflexive. This one is the only one under reflexive voice. Hitpael. Reflexive voice. And there we have the form hitmalech, hitmalech, hitmalech. In the hitpael is going to mean he made himself to rule. He made himself to rule. Reflexive means the subject is doing the action to himself. So he made himself to rule. He made himself to rule. So these are the 7 stems in Hebrew. The kind of action can be simple, intensive, or causative. And they are presenting the voice. Voice can be active, passive, or reflexive. But observe that the root mem lamed kaf is maintained in all the stems. And so notice that no matter the stem, the meaning, the core meaning always is circling around kingship or ruling. And this is what we meant. The root is the one that carries the core meaning. So kingship is still maintained in all the 7 stems, even though the form is changing. The root still remains the same. So that's important to observe. So if you know the root will guide you to the core meaning. Observe also something that is very interesting. Notice that how you pronounce the 7 stems gives you a clue on which stem they belong to. Have you noticed that? Look at the examples. On cow, now cow is also called pa'al. Remember cow is also called pa'al. So on cow you have malach, malach. Are you hearing that? Malach, pa'al, malach, pa'al. You have that a'a. And so how you pronounce it tells you the kind of stem it belongs to. For example, on PL, you have milech, milech, ie, PL, milech, milech, ie, milech. You can hear that. On Hifyu, you have himlich, 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 ii, hifiu. And by the way, it even starts with he, hifiu, himlich. That is also carried there. On nifal, you have nimlach, nimlach. It starts with ni because it's in the nifal, nimlach. And then you have ni'a, that ni'a sound, ni'a, nimlach, nifal. So it's pointing you to the nifal. On pu'al, you have mulach, mulach, u'a, pu'al. You can hear that. On hofo, you have homlach, homlach, o'a, hofau, hofau. Again, that is also carried in hitpael. Hitpael has hit malach, hit malach. You can hear that hit is showing you the stem. Stem is hitpael. And the sound is hit a'e, hit a'e, hit a'e. Because you have hit malech, hit malech. So hitpael. So that is very important. When you're looking at a verb, you can tell the kind of stem where the verb is coming from because of the sound. That is something that is just interesting in Hebrew as you are looking at the stems. Now let me say something also important. The cow stem is the basic and common stem, and all other stems are derived from it. And nearly 70% of Hebrew verbs in the Bible are in cow stem. And so that tells you that cow is very common to find in the Hebrew Bible. So when you're learning cow, you are learning the biggest portion of verbs in the Tanakh, in the Hebrew Bible. And in this course, in Hebrew 1, we'll look at the cow active stem. So in Hebrew 1, we'll be looking at one stem, and that is the cow active stem because it's the largest. In Hebrew 2, we'll be looking at the 6 other stems. So Hebrew 1, we'll be looking at the cow stem. All right, let's get started. Let's look at the cow stem. Now that you have the binyanim stems, Hebrew can conjugate these stems, and by conjugate we mean change the form to indicate when and how the action happens. So when you conjugate a stem, when you conjugate something, you are changing the form to indicate when and how the action is happening. And Hebrew does this using 2 verb conjugations. There are 2 verb conjugations in Hebrew, and these conjugations reflect the kind of action rather than the time of the action. This means that in Hebrew, or when you're talking about tense, you're talking about the kind of action, not really the time of the action. In English, the concern when you're talking about tense, you're talking about the time, past, present, future. But in Hebrew, tense mostly refers to the kind of action. And so in Hebrew, there are 2 conjugations that reflect the kind of action, and these describe whether the action is completed or incomplete. These 2 conjugations can be called tenses for the sake of learning, but these ones are more called conjugations. So these ones are more called conjugations. And there are 2. We have the perfect conjugation, which is also called katal conjugation. And the perfect tense or conjugation represents action that is completed. And therefore, since the action is completed, this is normally in the past, showing past tense or past action, completed action. And the second one we have the imperfect tense or imperfect conjugation. And this is also called yiktor. And this represents incomplete action that is not completed. And therefore, since the action is not complete, this is basically translated to be the present or future. So again, there are 2 tenses, and I'm using the word tenses loosely. There are 2 tenses, but more correctly, there are 2 conjugations, the perfect conjugation and the imperfect conjugation. And these have to do with the kind of action. Is it completed or incomplete? If it's completed, it's going to be on the perfect. If it's not completed, it's in the imperfect tense. Now, when you check the numbers, the perfect tense, the perfect has about 21,000 usages, while the imperfect has about 31,000 usages. So you can see that the imperfect is more common than the perfect. So you're going to find more verbs in the imperfect than the perfect. Now, notice we're saying the perfect is called a suffix conjugation. The perfect is called a suffix form. Why? Because it adds suffixes to the verb. While the imperfect is called prefix form. Why? Because it adds prefixes to its form. So that is very important also to know. And when you look at the examples, this will become very clear. But for now, know that the perfect is suffix form and the imperfect is a prefix form. Now, each of the 7 stems of binyanim is going to have 2 forms, one for the perfect and one for the imperfect. In short, each stem can be used to show a past action and also can be used to show a future or present action. We're going to see this later on. What is important for now is to realize that the 2 conjugations, these 2 conjugations, the perfect and imperfect, are the core building blocks because all the 7 stems are built from these. So these are core building blocks to verbs. Let's move on. Let's start by looking at the cow perfect verb. The cow perfect verbs. And in this chapter, in chapter 13, we're going to look at the cow perfect verbs. In chapter 14, we'll look at the imperfect verbs. Here we're looking at the cow perfect verbs. Now, the word cow means light. Cow stem presents a basic stem, the basic form of Hebrew verbs. When you're looking at the cow, you're looking at the basic form of the Hebrew verb. And in cow, we'll look at the perfect and imperfect conjugations or tenses, as I've said. But firstly, we start by looking at the perfect conjugation, the cow perfect conjugation. And the cow perfect conjugation, or the cow perfect tense, shows an action that is finished or complete. And that is why they're usually translated in the past as past action, past tense. For example, you have the verb shamar, shamar. Shamar means he kept, he heard or he kept, shamar. Or the verb katav. Katav means he wrote, he wrote. So you can see they're translated as past action because perfect conjugation presents a finished or completed action. So they are translated to be in the past. And just a footnote here that verbs that you master on the vocabulary chart are found in the cow perfect. They're found in the cow perfect. And that's why you translate them as he. He did this. For example, he kept, he guarded, he wrote, he walked, because they're found in the cow perfect. And so let's look at how the cow perfect verbs are built. Now remember we said perfect conjugation is called a suffix form because it adds suffixes to the end of the form, to the end of the verb form. When building the verbs, it adds suffixes. And these are the endings that you add to the verb to build it in the perfect conjugation. And these are the suffixes that you need to know. I'll guide you on when to master the endings, but for now, just observe how the cow builds its perfect verbs by adding these suffixes. And so in the first common singular, you have T, the suffix T, which is translated as I. Second masculine, you have ta, which means you. Second feminine, you have te, which means you. And in the third masculine, observe, there are no endings there. Third masculine does not have any suffix. In the third feminine, you have a, which means she. Third masculine means she. Under the plurals, first common you have nu, which means we. Second masculine plural you have tem, which means you. Second feminine plural you have ten. So masculine you have tem, feminine you have ten. And ten means you. Same translation as masculine second person. In the third common, you have u. Third common, you have u, which means they. Now, common suffixes are those that can be used on masculine verbs and also be used on feminine verbal forms. That's why they're common, because they can be found this side or this side. So third common, you have u, which means they. And that can be feminine or masculine. For now, know that these are the suffixes for the perfect verbs, and these are the ones that are added at the end of the verb form to form a perfect verb. That's important. Let's move. Let's look at how the perfect conjugation is built. Again, don't master the paradigm yet. I'm going to tell you when to do it. For now, just understand how the perfect conjugation is built. Now, perfect forms are made by adding suffixes to the verb root. As you can see here, these highlighted suffixes, these are suffixes that you add. The t, the ta, the te, those are the suffixes that are added to verb forms, to the verb root, to form the perfect conjugation. What is important is this. The suffix is telling us who did the action. So the suffix indicates person. And each of these suffixes that are added corresponds to an independent personal pronoun. If you still remember the independent personal pronouns, these are pronouns like you, I, he, she. These are independent personal pronouns. So know this, the suffixes that we add to perfect verbs correspond or are coming from independent personal pronouns. They are similar to independent personal pronouns with just some minor changes, as you are going to see. So let me explain. In first common singular, you have that T suffix that is added to the root katao. So you have katao T, and you can see katao T is translated as I killed. Why? Because that T ending, that E ending, hierarchiod, is coming from the preposition ani. And if you remember, ani means I. So katao T means I killed. And that's why I said that the suffix tells you who did the action. That suffix that you add is going to tell you who did the action, while the root gives you the core meaning. The root tells you what action, and the suffix tells you who did the action. So what action? Killing. Katao. Killing. So who killed? I killed. Katao T. I killed. Ani, I. From the pronoun ani. And in second person masculine, you have katao ta, and that ta is coming from second person masculine singular of ata, the pronoun ata. And you remember ata means you. So katao ta means you killed. Can see the translation? You killed. Katauta, you killed. In second feminine singular, you have kataut. Kataut. This is not kataute. Remember the rules on shua? Two shuas at the end of the word are both silent. So this becomes kataut. Kataut. And kataut, that t at the end is corresponding to the pronoun ate from second feminine singular. This pronoun ate means you. So kataut means you killed. You killed. You killed. I'll say it again. The suffix tells you who did the action, and the root tells you what kind of action. What action? Katau, killing. Who did the action? Kataut. Kataut. You did the action. Not only that, the suffix tells you the gender, the number, and the person. The person, gender, and number. The person, gender, and number. Also remember, perfect conjugation shows completed action, and that's why when you're translating, you can check the translations are in the past. Completed action. I killed, you killed, he killed, she killed, we killed. All these are in the past. Completed action. Because the perfect conjugation shows past completed action. It shows completed action. Now you're going to find some cases where it shows future action, but for now, when you're looking at the perfect tense, you should know that it shows past action, completed action. Let's look at other forms. Here we have first common plural, and we have the word kataunu. Kataunu. And kataunu, that nu at the end is coming from, it's corresponding to the pronoun anachnu. And anachnu means we. Anachnu means we. These are now plural forms. And so kataunu means we killed. We killed. Second masculine plural we have ketautem. Ketautem. And that tem at the end corresponds to the pronoun atem. And atem means you. On the pronouns, if you still remember, atem means you. And so katautem. And so ketautem means you killed. You killed. Second feminine plural, we have ketauten. Ketauten. That ten corresponds to aten, pronoun aten, and aten means you. You, second feminine plural. And ketauten then means you killed. The feminine, you killed. And finally, we have this. We have the third masculine singular, katao. And notice katao is not corresponding to any pronoun. So the third masculine singular form is a root or dictionary form of the verb. I want to say it again. The third masculine singular is very special because this is the root or dictionary form of the verb. And so on the chart for verbs, you're not going to find it having suffixes. This one is special, it's standing alone, no suffixes added. And all other forms are built from it. All other forms are built from it. These other forms, I killed, you killed, they killed, all these other forms are built from the third masculine singular. And so the third masculine singular has no suffix added to it. And because of this fact, later on we're going to rewrite this paradigm to begin with the third masculine form. Notice the other one. We have the third feminine singular. And the third feminine singular has katla. Katla. You have that a ending. That a ending is a feminine key ending. Remember the a on the nouns? This a is not corresponding to the pronouns, but is gotten from the feminine key ending a for the nouns a. And so the third feminine singular uses a ending, so it becomes katla. Katla. And katla means she killed, third feminine singular. She killed. Lastly, we have katlu. Katlu. Third common plural. Again, this one is not corresponding to the pronouns. Third common plural is katlu. Katlu. And katlu means they killed. They killed. That u is a third key ending. U means they. U means they. They killed. They killed. Alright, that gives you a huge head start in learning the paradigm. So now let's look at our rearranged perfect paradigm. Here is the rewritten suffix paradigm. And you may be saying, why is it rewritten? Why is the cow perfect paradigm starting with the third masculine singular? Why are we starting with the 3ms? We're starting with the 3ms because it is basic, because it has no suffixes added to it. And most importantly, this is where all other forms are built. All these other verb forms are built from the 3ms. And that's why I'm beginning with it. And so we're going to use this paradigm with the 3ms starting, showing all other forms built from the 3ms. So this is a paradigm that you need to master and know. This is the one that you need to master and know. Let me just give you some hints. If you look at the singular suffixes, from the top to bottom, you have dash, a, ta, te, ti. You have dash. Dash means no suffix. You have dash, a, ta, te, ti. Dash, a, ta, te, ti. And if you look at the plurals, you have o, tem, ten, nu. O, tem, ten, nu. So singular, you have dash, a, ta, te, ti. Then you have o, tem, ten, nu. Dash, a, ta, te, ti. O, tem, ten, nu. So you can use that to know the suffixes. In Hebrew, you use whatever you have to use to know the suffixes or the paradigms. Now let's look at some verb forms and how they add these suffixes. On the first example, we're going to use the verb katao. Katao. Katao means to kill. It means he killed. Katao means he killed. And so in 3ms, you have katao. Remember, 3ms is a basic form. It has no suffixes. This is where all these other forms are built. So 3ms, you have katao, which means he killed. 3fs, you have katla. Katla, which means she killed. 2ms, you have katauta. Katauta, which means you killed. 2fs, you have kataut. Kataut, which means you killed. 1cs, you have katauti. Katauti, which means I killed. 3cp, you have katlu. Katlu, which means they killed. 2mp, you have ketautem. Ketautem, which means you killed. 2fp, you have ketauten. Ketauten, and that means you killed. 1cp, you have ketaunu. Ketaunu, which means we killed. We killed. So this is how verb forms add the suffixes. And these are the same suffixes added to all the verb forms. In the perfect tense, in the perfect conjugation, these are the verb forms that you add. Alright, here's another example using the word shamar. Shamar, which means to keep, and shamar as a verb means he kept. He kept. So in 3ms, you have shamar, which means he kept. 3fs, you have shamra. Shamra, which means she kept. 2ms, you have shamauta. Shamauta, which means you kept. 2fs, you have shamat. Shamat, which means you kept. 1cs, you have shamauti. Shamauti, which means I kept. And on the plurals, you have 3cp. On 3cp, you have shamru. Shamru. 3cp, they kept. 2mp, you have shamautem. Shamautem, which means you kept. 2mp, second person is always translated as you. 2mp, shamautem, you kept. 2fp, shamauten, which means you kept. 1cp, you have shamanu. Shamanu. Shamanu means we kept. First common plural means we kept. We kept. Notice that it's the same suffixes that are added. You only change the roots to show a different word. So you only bring the roots of a different word, but maintain the suffix. Suffixes are the same. Now we looked at examples, but let me show you how to conjugate verbs. How you can add different verbs to the suffixes. And on the screen you have 3 verbs. You have katav. Katav means he wrote. You have katao. Katao means he killed. You have malach. Malach means he ruled. And most of these verbs that you're looking at, you've already covered on the vocabulary. So let's look at how they add suffixes. Now here's the hint. The perfect conjugation has a pattern. The suffixes are the same, so just memorize the paradigm and you can insert any 3 root consonants, any 3 root letters to conjugate the root. As long as the word is a strong verb, and by strong verbs I'm referring to verbs that have no guttural letter in their first or second root letter. Because those having gutturals in their first root letter are called weak verbs. And we'll look at weak verbs in Hebrew 2. In Hebrew 1, our focus is only on strong verbs. And so I'm saying the cow perfect conjugation has a pattern. And once you know that pattern, you can insert any 3 root letters and conjugate them using the same pattern, because the pattern is the same and the suffixes are the same. Now you may be asking, what about the changes in the other vowels? The other vowels under. How do I keep track of the vowels? And here's a simple principle that is used. As you're looking at the 3 conjugations, number 1, notice that throughout, the first and second root letters all take kametz or patach. They take kametz or patach respectively. The first one will have kametz and the second one will have patach. And you can see that throughout the 3 conjugations. And the only exception is in the 3fs, the third feminine singular, this one here. While the rest of the other forms have kametz patach under them. That's the first key when you're conjugating. The second key is this. When you add the suffixes, notice the syllable immediately next to the tone syllable receives a schwa. Let me say it again. When you add the suffixes, notice that the syllable immediately next to the tone syllable, the tone syllable is the last one, the one that is receiving emphasis when you're pronouncing, that's the tone syllable. When you're conjugating, the syllable next to the one that is receiving emphasis will receive a schwa. And this happens when you're moving from 3ms, from the third masculine singular forms. As you start adding endings, the syllable next to the second syllable from the last will get a schwa. And this is seen throughout the forms. So you can see that the second syllable from the last is receiving a schwa. That is very important in learning how to conjugate. So you need to know those 2 points. Number 1, that in the first and second consonant, you're going to have kametz and patach respectively. And as you start adding suffixes, the second from the last is going to receive a schwa. So let's go through them. Remember, katav means to write, he wrote. So 3ms is going to start with he wrote, katav, meaning he wrote. 3fs you have katva, meaning she wrote. 2ms you have katavta, meaning you wrote. 2fs you have katavt, katavt, and katavt means you wrote. 1cs you have katavti, katavti, katavti means I wrote. And on the word katao, katao means he killed. 3ms will start with katao. Katao means he killed. 3fs will be katla, and katla means she killed. 2ms we have katauta. Katauta means you killed. And then you have kataut. Kataut means you killed. And then you have katauti. Katauti means I killed. Using the word malach, meaning he ruled. So it's going to start with 3ms, malach. Malach means he ruled. And then you have malka. Malka means she ruled. And then you have malachta. Malachta means you ruled. And then you have malacht. Malacht. Malacht means you ruled. And then you have malakti. Malakti means I ruled. That's how you conjugate. So to conjugate means you add the suffixes, and then after adding the suffixes, you translate. That's conjugation. Let's look at the plurals. On the plurals, you have these forms. Same principle applies, only that on the plurals, you are using plural suffixes. So let's go through it. We're still using the same verbs. These are plural forms of the singulars. So you have, in the third person common plural, you have katvu. Katvu means they wrote. And then you have ketavtem. Ketavtem means you wrote. And then you have ketavten. Ketavten means you wrote. And then you have katavnu. Katavnu means we wrote. Using katav, plural, you have katlu. Katlu means they killed. And then you have ketautem. Ketautem means you killed. And then you have ketauten. Ketauten means you killed. And then you have kataunu. Kataunu means we killed. Using malach, malach means he ruled. In the plural, it's going to be malchu. Malchu means they ruled. Then you have melachtem. Melachtem means you ruled. And then you have melachten. Melachten means you ruled. And finally you have malachnu. Malachnu means we ruled. We ruled. This is how you conjugate verbs. So practice, practice, practice. So you can practice using different verbs and see if you can conjugate the verbs and translate them correctly. Now it may look challenging now, but the more you practice, the more you learn. Let's look at passing. Let's look at how you pass perfect verbs. Passing is simply giving information like the stem, the conjugation, the person, gender, and number, the translation, and the lexical form of the verb you're given. For example, the first one we have katav. Katav. How do we pass this one? Now katav, you can see katav has no suffixes, and we said the 3ms, the third masculine singular, is the one that is simple and basic. It has no suffixes added. And so katav is 3ms. The person, gender, and number is 3ms. Third person, masculine, gender, and singular. So 3ms. Katav. The conjugation is perfect. For now, the conjugation will remain perfect until we look at the imperfect tense or the imperfect conjugation. The stem, throughout this course, the stem of a verb will always be cow. If you're passing a verb, the stem of a verb will always be cow. Because in Hebrew 1, we look at the cow stem. Alright, how do you translate katav? How do you translate katav? Now, to translate katav, you need to know that katav means he wrote. You must have mastered this verb. Katav means he wrote. He wrote. And the lexical form is katav, because katav comes from katav. There is no change there. Lexical forms are normally gotten from 3ms, the third masculine singular. And katav itself is the lexical form, 3ms. Alright, next we have this word, zakarta. Zakarta. How do you pass zakarta? So we said the stem throughout is cow. We're using the cow stem. And conjugation in chapter 13 is perfect. Perfect conjugation. Now, how do you tell the person, gender, and number? You look at the suffix. You look at the ending, that ta ending. The ta is coming from second masculine singular. The ta suffix is coming from second masculine singular. On the paradigm, on the chart, that ta is coming from second masculine singular. So the person, gender, and number is stored by the person. Now, where is this word coming from? What is the lexical form? The lexical form is zakar. Zakar. Now, you may be wondering, how do you get the lexical form? When you have endings, how do you get the lexical form? Let me give you the shortcut. The first step, remove the suffix and leave only the 3 root letters. So you remove the ta and leave only the root letters. And step number 2, you remove all other vowels and leave only kametz and patach. Remove all other vowels, the shua and other vowels, and leave only kametz, the first kametz, and the second patach. If you do that, you're going to remain with zakar, zakar, and that is the lexical form. So that is how you find the lexical form. You remove the suffix and you remove all other vowels, but leave kametz and patach. That is the lexical form. Now zakar, zakar means he remembered, he remembered. But zakarta, the person, gender, and number is 2ms, second masculine singular. And so because the person is second person is translated as you, and so it's going to be you remembered, past tense, past action, you remembered. Zakarta, you remembered. So the lexical form will help you translate it because it tells you the meaning of the word. And the ending, the suffix, is going to give you the person, gender, and number. So let me say it in this way. The root tells you what the word will mean, but the ending tells you who is doing the action. The root tells you are talking about remembering, but the suffix tells you who is remembering, who remembered. And it's in the second person, so it's you remembered. And that's how you translate. Next we have this verb, yauda, yauda. How do we pass this one? Now, yauda, because of that a ending, the person, gender, and number is 3fs. 3fs. Third feminine singular. Third feminine singular. It's coming from the word. The lexical form of this one is yalad. Yalad. Remember, remove the suffix, remove all other endings, and put kametz and patach on the first and second root letters. And you have yalad. Yalad. And yalad means she bore, she gave birth. So Yauda in the third person feminine singular means she bore. She bore. She gave birth. She bore. That's how you pass this word. Next you have this word Yashavta. Yashavta. How do we pass this one? Remember, the stem is cow, the conjugation is perfect, and the person, gender, and number, that ta is from the 2ms, second masculine singular. And because it's second masculine, you translate it as you. Yashavta is coming from Yashav. Yashav. And Yashav means he dwelt. In the second masculine, it means you dwelt. You dwelt. Alright, next we have this word halach. Halach. How do we pass this one? The stem is cow, conjugation is perfect, and because it's already having kametz and patach, tells you it's coming from 3ms, that is telling you that's the lexical form. The third masculine singular is the one that is simple and basic. It has no suffixes added. So halach, lexical form is halach, the same form. Third masculine translated as he walked, because halach means he walked, and so the translation is he walked. Next you have this verb zakharnu, zakharnu. How do we pass this one? Stem is cow, conjugation is perfect, and because of that nu is telling you it's from 1CP, first common plural. And how you translate 1CP is we. Now what does the root mean? The root is coming from zakar, and zakar means he remembered. In 1CP, in first common plural, it's going to be we remembered. Next we have this verb shamarti. How do you pass shamarti? Stem is cow, conjugation is perfect, but person, gender, and number, looking at that T suffix, the person, gender, and number of T, it's coming from 1CS, first common singular. And you translate 1CS as I. But I what? The meaning is coming from the root, and the lexical form is shamar. Shamarti is coming from shamar, and shamar means he guarded or he kept. So shamarti means I guarded or I kept. Next you have this word shamarnu. How do we pass this one? Here's how we pass shamarnu. Stem is cow, conjugation is perfect, and person, gender, and number is 1CP. 1CP, remember 1CP is we. One common plural is we. But that is coming from the lexical form shamar. And shamar means he kept, he watched, he guarded, or he kept. And so in 1CP, shamarnu is going to be we guarded or we kept. Alright, that's about passing. Now, before you look at translations, before you look at examples on translations, how to translate in the perfect conjugation, let's look at something that will help us, which is important. And that is Hebrew word order. Now, Hebrew does not follow the English word order. You have noticed that even how you write Hebrew, you write it from the right to left. English is left to right. And so even when it comes to Hebrew sentence order, word order in a sentence, Hebrew is different from the English. How different? The general order of the Hebrew sentence is this: verb, subject, object. Visor, verb, subject, object. But English uses SVO, which is subject, verb, object. Subject, verb, object. In English, you say, she brought the book on the table. She brought the book on the table. She is the subject, brought is the verb, the table is the object. But Hebrew uses verb, subject, object. In Hebrew, you start with the verb, then you come to the subject, the person doing the action, then you come to the receiver of the action. the object. So in Hebrew, this sentence was going to read, brought she the book. Brought she the book. Hebrew always starts with the verb, then the subject, object. Verb, subject, object. That's the word order in Hebrew. And so an example is Genesis 1 verse 1. You find the phrase, bara Elohim et hashamayim. Bara Elohim et hashamayim. Now here, bara is a verb. It means he created. Bara means he created. It's a verb. It means he created. It's in the 3ms, third masculine singular. Bara, he created. And these are common verbs that you find in the Tanakh. So, bara Elohim et hashamayim. Bara means he created. Elohim means God. So you have he created, God, the heavens. Hashamayim means the heavens. And so you have verb, subject, the person creating, and the object being created. Verb, subject, object. That's Hebrew. He created God, the heavens. And this is the Hebrew word order. Visor, verb, subject, object. And it's important to know the order because when Hebrew changes this order, it's only for one purpose, and that is the purpose of emphasis. In that case, Hebrew is going to show emphasis on something, and so it's going to change word order. But the normal order is verb, subject, object. Let's move on. Let's look at something else, and that is the direct object marker. This is something that is very common in the Hebrew phrases, the direct object marker. And the direct object marker is this small word et. This small word et. This is the direct object marker, et. Maybe wondering, what is this function? In English, the direct object is shown by word order. You use word order. How you arrange the sentence shows which one is the subject and which one is the object. But that is not how Hebrew works. So in English, for example, you say something like, I gave the book to her. I gave the book to her. I is the subject of the sentence, and her is the object of the sentence. And objects of the sentence are found at the end. The object of the sentence is found at the end. That is in English. You always start with the subject and always end with object. But in Hebrew, it's not like that because Hebrew changes the word order. And so to show the direct object in the sentence, Hebrew uses this small word et. Et. And that is a pointer in the sentence to which one is the object of the sentence. A direct object is a word representing a person or thing upon which the action of the verb is being performed. And the direct object may be definite or indefinite. And if it's definite, it's usually going to be preceded by this small word, et. So et is going to point to the direct object. This particle et does not translate to anything. It's never translated. When you come in the English, when you translate the Hebrew to English, the word et is never translated. It's just a pointer showing you the direct object in the sentence, but never translated. That's number one. Number two, remember it points to the object receiving the action of the verb. It signals to you that what follows it is the definite object of the verb. Alright, let me explain using Genesis 1 verse 1. Again, Genesis 1 verse 1, you have the verse, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim wa et haaretz. Again, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim wa et haaretz. In this phrase, let's try to identify the object of the sentence. Now, Bereshit means in the beginning. Bereshit means in the beginning. Bara is a verb to create. He created. Bara means he created. Elohim means God. So in the beginning, he created God. Then you have et hashamayim wa et haaretz. Since you have et, the et is showing you the direct object of the sentence. Bara is a verb, he created, but who created? God. What did he create? You have et and et to point to show you what is being created. Hashamayim, the heavens, were et and haaretz, the earth. That is how the et works. Et hashamayim were et haaretz, the heavens and the earth. Remember, it's never translated, but it's just a pointer pointing to you what is being done, pointing to you what is receiving the action. And this is why it's important for us to learn Hebrew, because some things are not found in English that are seen in the Hebrew. All right, let's look at more examples on the word et, on the object marker. Now notice the word et, the particle et can be written with sego or sere. Sometimes you're going to see it written with et sere, sometimes it's going to be written with esego. So it's still the particle et, it's still functioning the same, pointing to the object of the sentence. And as you look at these examples, notice three things. Number one, et always appears before a definite object, not indefinite. Et is always placed before an object that is having a definite article or an object that is a proper noun. That's why you put et. You always see it before, in front of definite articles. Example, here you have et haor, et haor. Down you have et halechem, et halechem. Why? Et is always placed before definite words. Number two, names are always definite. Remember, names are always definite. Names are proper nouns and proper nouns are definite. And number three, remember, it always points to the direct object of the sentence. And therefore, it's always placed in front, immediately before the direct object. And so when you see et, the next word is the direct object in the sentence. Those things are very important. Let's look at the examples. In the examples, the first phrase we have, Wayar Elohim et haor. Wayar Elohim et haor. Now, Wayar means he saw. He saw. Elohim means God. Et is just pointing to the object, and so it's always placed, you can see it's always placed before the object, before its direct object, and so the next noun is the direct object. So you have et haor. And haor, or means light. Haor means the light. So you have, and he saw, wayar. The verb is translated as, he saw God, Elohim, he saw God, the light. But you're not going to say he saw God, the light, because God is not the object. God is a subject. It's only that Hebrew starts with verb, subject, object. So you have verb, subject, object. He saw, who is seeing? The subject, God, Elohim. What is he seeing? Haor, the light. So the translation becomes, and God saw the light. And God saw the light. Another one is, Achal Avraham et halechem. Achal Avraham et halechem. How do you translate that? Look at et. You have a verb, achal, means he ate. He ate. Can see kametz patach, third person masculine singular, he ate. He ate. Who is eating? Subject follows, Abraham. Abraham. So you don't say he ate Abraham. Abraham is not the one who is being eaten. Abraham is the one who is eating. Abraham is a subject. Verb, subject, object. He ate Abraham, ate halechem. Et is telling you what is being eaten. Halechem, the bread. Lechem means bread. So he ate Abraham the bread, which simply means Abraham ate the bread. Abraham ate the bread. That is very important in learning to translate. You need to understand how Hebrew works. Hebrew works like this. Verb, subject, object. Viso, verb, subject, object. Verb, then the one doing the action, then the one receiving the action. That's how it works. All right, let's look at translations. Let's look at the examples that we can find on translations, how to translate perfect verbs. I'm going to run you through a number of them. The first phrase we have, Lo shamru toratecha. Lo shamru toratecha. How do you translate that? In the past chapter, you looked at what lo means. Lo means not. It means not. Shamru, that's a verb. We have looked at this verb. Shamru is coming from the word shama. He kept. He guarded, he kept. And because of the suffix u, the suffix u is 3mp, third masculine plural. It means they have kept. So it's lo shamru, not they kept, not they kept, lo, not they kept, toratecha, toratecha. Now we have already looked at toratecha. Toratecha, in the past we looked at pronominal suffixes on nouns. So toratecha is Torah with pronominal suffix. And that ka means your, so your law, your law. So not they kept your law. Remember, the verb shamru means they have kept. They have kept. Shamru means they have kept. So when you bring it in English, it becomes they have not kept your law. Your law, Toratecha. So English says they have not kept your law. They have not kept your law. Next phrase we have Amar Navo Belibo Ein Elohim. Amar Navo Belibo Ein Elohim. Now Amar is a verb. Amar is a verb. It means he said. Said masculine singular. He said. Naval. Nabo in Hebrew means full. It means full. Belivo. Be is the preposition be. It means in. Livo is coming from levo. Lev means heart. Livo is his heart. That hodimoa suffix on the word lev. It means his heart. Showing possession, his heart. And then you have ein. Ein means no. Ein means no. Elohim. Elohim means God. So you have, he said, full, in his heart, no God. He said, full in his heart, no God. Ein, no. No Elohim, no God. And when you bring it in English, the translation becomes, the fool said in his heart, there is no God. That is Psalms 14 verse 1. Next you have the phrase, Hine shalakti lecha kesef wezahav. Hine shalakti lecha kesef wezahav. Hine simply means behold. Behold. Shalakti. Shalakti is a verb coming from the word shalach. Shalach means he sent. So when you add that T ending, it becomes I sent. I sent. Lecha. Lecha is coming from the preposition le with pronominal suffix. We looked at this in the previous chapter. Preposition le with pronominal suffix. Lecha means to you. Lecha means to you. So, behold, I have sent to you, or behold, I sent to you. Chesef. Chesef is silver. Where is conjunction wow, means and. Kesef, where zahav. Zahav is gold. Behold, I sent to you silver and gold. And most of these words, we've already looked at them. And so by now you must be able to translate them, except for the verb. By now you must be able to translate most of these words. So behold, I have sent to you silver and gold. And then we have the phrase, Zakati mishpatecha me'olam Yahweh. Zakati mishpatecha me'olam Yahweh. First of all, let's look at the verb zakati. Zakati is the verb. That T ending is telling you that it's coming from first common singular. The lexical form for zakati is zakar, which means he remembered. But because of the T suffix, in the first common singular it becomes I remembered. I remembered mishpatecha from mishpat. Mishpat means judgment. Mishpatecha, you can see that's a rayod infix. That cha at the end is a sign of a plural type 2 pronominal suffix. Plural type 2 pronominal suffix. So mishpatecha means your judgments. Your judgments. Your judgments. And the noun is plural because of the serayod. It's telling you that you translate that noun as a plural. It's a plural noun. So mishpatecha means judgments and not judgment. Your judgments. Your judgments. And then we have me'olam. Me'olam, and that me is coming from the preposition min. Min means from. But min before gutturals, ayin is a guttural. Min before gutturals is pointed as me, which still means from. Olam means eternal, it means odd. It means odd. So you have me'olam, and me'olam means from odd, from eternity, from odd. And so you have zakarti, I remembered, mishpatecha, your judgments, from odd, Yahweh. Yahweh is Lord. So translation becomes, I remembered your judgments of old, Lord, or O Lord. That is Psalms 119 verse 52. And that's how you translate that. And now it's getting involving. Now it's calling for everything that you have been learning. And so if you're still lagging, you're going to be lagging in how you translate. My encouragement would be to go back and revise and go through. Otherwise, it will be very hard for you to translate. Where we have reached, we've looked at pronominal suffix, pronouns, nouns, and we've looked at construct states. You must be able to tell all those things. Translation is going to call for three things. Number one, it's going to call for vocabulary, for you to know vocabulary. It's going to call for you to remember what you have learned in the past, the paradigms. Number three, it's going to call for pronominal suffixes, knowledge of pronominal suffixes. That's very important. That's very important in translation. Let's proceed. More examples. The first one we have Wela Hoshek Kara Laila. Wela Hoshek Kara Laila. Now you can see highlighted word is Kara. Kara is a verb. It's in the 3ms, third masculine singular. Kara means he called. He called. But let's look at the first one here. The first word is Wela Hoshek. And when you look at this word, Wela Hoshek, this word has three things, if not four. First one, it has conjunction wa, which means and then you have the preposition le, which is pointed as la. And now you're wondering, why is it pointed as la? It's pointed as la because it has swallowed up the definite article. That patach is coming from definite article, and so the le has swallowed up definite article. We've already covered this on prepositions. So it's going to borrow the patach, and so you're going to only remain with la. And la means to there. And you have hoshek. Hoshek means darkness. And so you have and to the darkness. And to the darkness, Kara, he called Laila. Laila means night. And to the darkness, he called night. Let's move on. Hauku b'nei Israel. Hauku b'nei Israel. Let's start with the verb. Hauku. Hauku is third common plural, 3CP. U at the end is 3CP. And 3CP is translated as they. So the lexical form of this word is halach. Halach means he walked. And so the translation becomes they walked. In the third person, they walked. Because the lexical form will tell you how to translate the verb. They walked from the suffix they, but walked is coming from the lexical form, they walked. And then we have benei. That's a rayod tells you that the word is in construct. The noun benei is in construct. And benei is coming from ben. Ben means son. Benei is in the plural construct. It means sons of. Sons of Israel. Sons of Israel. Sons of Israel. And so you have, they walked, sons of Israel. But because Israel is definite, it's a proper noun, so it's definite. You say, the sons of Israel. So it becomes, they walked, the sons of Israel. Remember, verb, subject, object. Verb, subject, object. So the subject is the sons. So when you translate, you begin with the subject. The sons of Israel walked. Which literally means the sons of Israel, they walked. But in English, the sons of Israel walked. Sons of Israel walked. Next we have the phrase, Avadti et avikem. Avadti et avikem. How do you translate that phrase? First of all, let's look at the verb. The verb is having the T suffix from first common singular. T suffix from first common singular. How you translate that is I. Avadti is from the verb avad. Avad means he served. So avadti, that suffix means I, first common singular, I. I have served or I served. Et is pointing to the object. Who did you serve? Next object. Avichem. Avichem is coming from Av. Av means father. Av means father. So Avichem. So Avichem, you have the pronominal suffix on the word Av. And so pronominal suffix on a noun Av shows you possession. I served your father, Avichem, your father. I served your father, et Avichem, your father. Alright, we have more examples here, and I'm going to go through these very quickly. The first one, the first phrase you have, Shemarten et hatorot. Shemartem et hatorot. Now, shemartem is a verb. It means you kept, from the word shamar, meaning you kept. With that tem ending, it becomes you kept. Et hatorot, torot means law. It's in the plural. Laws. So you kept the laws. Next you have Katav Hanavi Basefer. Katav Hanavi Basefer. Katav means he wrote. It means he wrote. Hanavi means the prophet. The prophet. Navi means prophet. Basefer, and this form is what I was talking about. When you have a preposition be and it's pointed with a patach, just know that you have a swallowed up definite article there. So that means in the Sefer. Sefer means book. The translation is going to be, the prophet he wrote in the book. The prophet wrote in the book. Next you have this phrase, Ragfu et ha'anashim. Ragfu et ha'anashim. Ragfu et ha'anashim. How to translate that? Now, ragfu, even if you didn't know what it meant, but you can still give the lexicoform. Lexicoform is coming from radaf, and that means he pursued. So radfu, with that suffix, it means they pursued. Third masculine plural, they pursued. Et ha'anashim, ha'anashim, you have the anashim. Anashim is men, the anashim, the men. They pursued the men. They pursued the men. Next you have Zakarta et habrit. Zakarta et habrit. Zakarta means you remembered, from the verb zakar. The lexicoform is zakar, and that suffix means you, so it means you remembered. Et habrit, et is pointing to what is being remembered. You remembered the berit. You remembered the berit, the covenant. So you remembered the covenant. Next you have Kavatzti et hanshei ha'ir. Kavatzti, from the verb kavatz, it means he gathered. So with that kavatzti, with that t suffix, it means I gathered. First common singular, I gathered. I gathered. What did you gather? Et, pointing to what has been gathered. Et is pointing to the object. Et anshei ha'ir. Anshei ha'ir. Anshei, from the word anashim, men. Now it's in the construct, so it's anshei, men of ha'ir, men of the ear, men of the ear, men of the city. Ear is city. I gathered men of the city. But now it's pointed with a definite article. City is definite. And so it's going to be, I gathered the men of the city. I gathered the men of the city. Let's move on. Let's look at chapter 13 vocabulary. These are words that you need to know for chapter 13. Let's look at the nouns. We have even. We have even. Even means stone. Even means stone. Next word is amar. Amar. Amar means cubit. Amar means cubit. The next word is esh. Esh. Esh means fire. Esh means fire. Fire. Next word is berit. Berit means covenant. This is one of the common words that you need to know. Berit means covenant. Next word is mishpacha. Mishpacha. Mishpacha means family. It means a clan. Mishpacha means family. It means a clan. Next word you have pe. Pe means mouth. It means opening or it means mouth. Next you have the word kerev. Kerev. Kerev means inner part, inward, inner part. Next you have the word naval. Naval. Naval means full. It means full. And that's why you get the name Nabal. Nabal. And Nabal means a fool. Next you have the word sadeh. Sadeh. Sadeh means field. It means pasture or field. Next you have the word sha'ar. Sha'ar. That means gate. Gate or city gate. Then we come to the verbs. The first one is yadash, yadash. And you can see verbs have a common form, a pattern, kametz patach, kametz patach. That's a sign of a verb in third person masculine. And as I said, verbs on the vocabulary here are coming from the third masculine singular on cow perfect paradigm. That's where they're coming from. So take note of that. So you have yarash, yarash. Yarash means he took possession of. He took possession of. And then we have the verb karat, karat. Karat means he cut, or he cut off, or he made. It means he cut or he made. And mostly it has to do with making a covenant. Making a covenant. Now this verb is very important in Hebrew. Let me just share with you an exegetical insight on the verb karat. Karat. Karat means to cut, and it means to cut a covenant. And maybe wondering how were covenants formed in Near East, in ancient Near East. So in ancient Near East, covenants were often ratified by cutting animals into pieces, and the two parties involved, making the covenant, would walk between the cut pieces. So when people are making a covenant, the covenant would be sealed by cutting animals into pieces, and they would put pieces on one side and on the other side. And the two parties involved making the covenant would walk between the cut pieces. And this is exactly what you find, for example, in Genesis 15 verse 9 to 18, when God makes a covenant with Abraham. You find animals are cut in half, and their pieces are laid on opposite side. And God is seen passing between the pieces. And this gives you a powerful theological insight. Because in ancient Near East culture, walking between cut animals meant, may what happened to these animals happen to me also if I break this covenant. In short, they were saying, we seal this covenant by invoking death upon ourselves if we break it. Yet you see grace in chapter 15 because only God is seen walking between the pieces. Abraham is put to sleep and God is the only one who walks between the cut pieces. So this means that God takes covenant obligations upon himself alone. God guarantees his own promises. And by God walking between the cut pieces, God is saying, may what happened to these animals happen to me also if I break this covenant with you, Abraham. And so this is how covenants were formed. This gives a cultural insight that covenants were never signed, they were cut. When you're making a covenant, you don't sit down to sign. They used to cut. Covenant were cut. And that's why the Hebrew word karat means to cut. It means to cut a covenant. And this is why learning Hebrew is very important. This is why we learn Hebrew, because Hebrew unlocks the gospel. It presents insights that are hidden in the gospel. And so learning Hebrew is very important. Next you have the verb katav. Katav means he wrote. Katav means he wrote. Next you have the verb sagar. Sagar. Sagar means he shut. It means he shut. He closed, he shut. Still on the verbs, next you have avar. Avar. And it means he passed. He passed. He crossed over. He passed. Next you have the word pachad. Pachad. And that means he visited. He took care of. He visited. Next you have karav. Karav. And that means he came near. He approached. He came near. Next you have the word shakav. Shakav. And shakav means he lay down. Shakav means he lay down. Next you have the particles. Particles are small words that draw attention, the hearer's attention, to what is coming next. So you have two here. The first one is hoy. Hoy. Hoy means alas. Woe. It means alas. And then you have the most common, hine. Hine. Hine means behold, look, or behold. So these are the two common particles. And this marks the end of chapter 13. Practice, practice, practice. That's how you learn Hebrew. Lay it out.